What do you have to say for yourself? I mean, don't talk. I don't know if people are aware of what's happening. You're familiar with the prodigal son, that parable?
Yeah.
And, the dad should have been angry at the kid. Mm-hmm. Should have been furious, should have slammed the door on him, just like I should do with you, with how much not only you bought the expansionist propaganda hook, line, and sinker, but you swallowed it and vomited it all over the airwaves. But now you've come around, and I see you on the horizon, and I'm put the ring on his finger, kill the fatted calf. Let's throw a party, because finally you've sort of seen the light. Would you like to share with people what's happened in your personal life here?
So yeah, it's been very life-changing to see this change of perspective. I haven't changed that much, because I'd still like the expansion that we did receive.
However, you do not like all that came with it.
Right.
Yeah.
But see, here's the thing. I think the 12 team actually worked out perfectly last year. I thought last year was one of the more entertaining football seasons that we've seen. It's still, because all the pushback I heard from you and others were like, the regular season's not going to matter anymore. There's not going to be meaningful games. Tell that to Ole Miss when Kentucky came to town. Yeah. Tell that to Alabama, when they lose to Vanderbilt, or Oklahoma. Tell that to some of the teams that were this close to being in the college football playoff, but they lost that regular season game that still mattered. The conference championship games, I heard those were going to be irrelevant. Tell that to Clemson, who played their way into the playoff. So I've gotten to the point where I don't want to go back. I don't want to go to 4. So I don't want to go that far back. I'm not returning that much to home, but I just feel like we're getting so out ahead of ourselves and moving at such a pace in search for the almighty dollar that we do risk what really does make college football special: the regular season and conference championship games, if we go to 16, if we go to 14. And I really think the 12-team model has been a smashing success. So why are we going to bail on it after just 2 years?
Okay, so 12's okay if you do the reworked seeding thing like they did.
Yeah, even that I think it's common sense to make that little tweak, which isn't that dramatic, and see how that one goes.
So the one thing, all right, so what you and I have fought tooth and nail on, off camera, on camera about, is I think you got to get a few years in before you really know the impact something's had. So you just mentioned it didn't hurt the regular season. We went one go around the merry-go-round. I'm going to use Ohio State, Michigan on you. Okay, last year, I'm watching that game, you're watching that game. We're on the edge of our seat because we have not conditioned ourselves to think along the lines of Ohio State can lose this thing and still go play for and win a national championship. But then you saw it happen. All right, so you've heard the talk. In retrospect, people have looked and said, well, what did that game really mean? Well, for those teams, it meant everything, but it'll always mean everything for those teams and for those fan bases. But the great thing about rivalry in college football is it kind of means something across the country. It has this defined meaning. So what I'm saying is I wonder if we go 2, 3, 4 cycles into this thing and we continue to see what used to be a huge game, huge ramifications on the outcome, and then the result of the playoff renders it kind of moot, I wonder if those games still have the same urgency. I don't know that you can even answer it.
I think all you have to do is ask Ryan Day or any one of those Ohio State players how painful that loss was for them emotionally, psychologically, and what they had to overcome. Put yourself back, what was it, a 3-week window from the time they lost that game?
Yeah, where he needs to win or he'll be fired.
Yes, I mean, there were real conversations, which were absurd and over the top, but Ryan Day was coaching for his future with that playoff game against Tennessee. And, of course, we know the rest plays out. The rest is history with how that team caught fire. But that is the one thing that I never want to lose is the meaningfulness of rivalry games. And I don't think that'll change. I do think, I'm more worried about the players hopping around from school to school because I don't know if losses matter as much to players anymore as long as the check clears. That to me was the biggest difference going from college to the NFL. And what kind of bummed me out was if we lost any game. We lost to Virginia and we were number 1 in the country. We lost the Thursday night game, first loss in the ACC.
Your life's over.
Life's over.
Yep.
But for the entire week until the next game comes back, and even after, it's still a loss that stings me that much that we lost that game. Losing to Miami, losing to Florida, any of the games that we lost, I don't know if players today are hurt as much. And I'm not a masochist or anything. I don't want them to feel that pain, but I do want them to want to win for the school, for the fans of that school. And when you're hopping from school to school and you're getting as much money as these players, I think that is more detrimental to the sport than a playoff with the 12 teams.
We're in such a weird place right now because you probably agree with me on this in that up until 5 minutes ago on your watch, you would have said, keep Congress away from college football. Like keep the federal government far away from college football. Like go manage the Department of Transportation, but leave the Department of College Football alone. But then you get further and further and further into the weeds and you realize no one's driving the ship here. We got a guy who's in charge of the Big Ten. We got a guy who's in charge of the SEC. We got university presidents. Who's driving the college football ship? And the answer is no one. And so then you've got the portal being the way it is. You got NIL being the way it is. And everybody has a motivation behind the words that come out of their mouth. And so few people's motivation is strictly best interest of college football. So I want to see where you are on this. I have found myself over the past year and a half thinking to myself, maybe they do need Congress. Like maybe a law is what they do need. Now, if you or any agent out there or any president or commissioner could convince me absent congressional oversight, they could have rules that they're capable of enforcing, I'm 100% with you. Keep Congress far away from it. I haven't seen that. Like I have not seen college football even remotely display the ability to police itself in a legal manner. And so I cannot believe I found myself saying that. But like I was on the phone with an agent the other day and I said, you got business to take care of on your end. And I know it's not in your like self-interest to see this thing governed in a way that sort of reins in the out of control spending, but you're looking out for you. Coaches are looking out for coaches. I'm trying to just look out for the best interest of college football, and I think more and more maybe that's the only thing that really blanketly returns things to somewhat of a norm.
Yeah, I know. It's almost in Congress, whatever it would be. If it's commissioner, I'd like to take on that role.
And I've got your full support.
Yeah, that's right. I would. So, and it's not blaming anybody. Like Greg Sankey is looking out for the SEC.
Yeah.
I don't blame him.
Everybody's doing their job.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're doing it wonderfully, right? Especially Pate and Sankey. They own college football right now. Even though there's back and forth between them, there's a little bit of a rivalry, and they're trying to look out for their conferences. But you are so right. No one is looking out for the best interest of the sport, for the best interest of the fans. I mean, we're just talking about the impact of the fans and how that's always what's made college football different is the tradition, the history, the passion, which is there. And I've seen passionate NFL fans. It's just not the same. It really isn't. It is what makes the sport, the game day environment. And I do worry that people are getting a little bit disenfranchised with the direction the sport has gone. So if it's Congress, if that saves it, if it's a commissioner, there has to be something. Even this House settlement, which, what was it? How long have we been? 3 weeks we've had this, and already it's been blown up where we're like, I was told by multiple athletic directors that this is going to solve a lot of the problems. This is going to solve some of the portal movement, and we're not going to have collectives that are going to be able to buy players away. And 3 weeks into it, we've already seen just, within the last few hours that all of a sudden that's going away. Collectives are back. And it's going to be back to the arms race of whoever can spend the most money. So if it is Congress comes in there, but I get all the arguments against Congress because it's all of a sudden you're anti-capitalist, which I understand that. Like who is to say that? And that was always why I didn't have faith that this was going to work. I did not think this would last long. I thought it would last longer than 3 weeks. And I thought there would be, some lawsuits that were filed. I thought it would take time, but who's to say that Carson Beck can't make $4 million at Miami, that Darian Mensah can't make $3 or $4 million at Duke? Like who it just gets to decide that? So even if Congress comes in and they implement these rules, it still doesn't feel very American for them. So I still don't know the answer. I almost feel like the only answer is you take an atomic bomb and you blow up everything and you start from scratch. And unfortunately, and this is what you're starting to hear from more coaches, is that really the only solution is to have the players played as employees? But that's even a bigger, more complex problem because then you've got to have a union. You've got I was talking to Joel Klatt earlier today, and I was telling him, I'm like, man, I'm just tired of all this ancillary stuff. I cannot wait for the season to start. Then we get to talk about ball and we get to watch games and see how they impact. But it's like this black hole, this never-ending abyss of problems. Once you feel like you've got one little one solved, it either blows up in your face and it's not truly solved, or another one crops up. And I think that's what I worry about, is how long this is taking and how much time we're spending proposing all these solutions with no clear-cut answer in place for the foreseeable future.
You got to – look, you know me. We're kind of alike on this. I mean, no one believes in the free market more than I do. But in any given sector of society, there are certain spaces that are cordoned off from that. I always use like the natural preserve in the middle of Nashville, that if it were governed under the laws that the rest of the city operates under, I mean,
condos going up.
Yes,
right? They'd be
yes.
developing it. Yeah.
But like collectively, the civil society there decided, I think we want this, so we're going to make a special carve out. It's going to be the exception to the rule. Like I look at college football and flat out will tell you, pure free market principles are not in the best interest of college athletics.
Right.
It's just not. In my worldview, the way that I love it. So if you don't feel the same way I do, that just means we got different worldviews. But I look at it and you asked, who should be able to say that so-and-so can't make that amount of money? A governing body because he's a college football player would be my answer. Mm-hmm. And then once you get out of it, you can make whatever you want to. But I do agree with you in what you said with Klatt. So in the interest of talking ball, you've got that. Do you still have that ACC tattoo on your lower back? Was that a lick stick or was that?
No. I do not have an ACC tattoo or any other tattoo. I don't have an anti-SEC. I don't have one like with the SEC crossed out either.
Oh, that was fake too.
That was fake too. I cannot stand conference pride. I don't like it at all. I've never said the ACC is the best conference in college football either.
You have not. You have not said that.
No.
However, it could be after week 1 because I have a list of games in my hand right here. And to varying degrees, all of these are winnable and all of these are losable. I'm going to read you 7 games. Mm-hmm. Week 1, ACC. All right, Bama, FSU, Georgia Tech, Colorado, LSU, Clemson, TCU, North Carolina, Tennessee, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, Notre Dame, Miami. They could go 6-1 there, and you're off to the races. You know as well as I do, it could be Clemson wins and no one else wins. Out of those 7, you had to guess right now, how many games does the ACC win?
I was trying to follow along. I think the ACC is only favored in 2 of those, right?
But they get a lot of them at home.
They do, but still, they're only favored in 2 of them. It terrifies me. I'm going to have to log off of social media probably that weekend because of what's at stake and because of how I think it could go. Of those games, I think – For Clemson, I think clearly they're the torchbearer, right? That's always been the thing that the ACC's kind of had is that standard bearer, whether it was Florida State, whether it was Clemson, really that's only been the 2. You know, historically, you go back even before Miami was in the ACC, Miami was a team you could have counted on. But I think Clemson, that's like a must-win game because at least if you go 1-6, at least you have that national championship hope. But if they go 1-6, it's a disaster, another disaster, and that would be Jim Phillips' worst nightmare. It'd be my worst nightmare, and it'd be everybody in the ACC's worst nightmare. The other 2 games that I would prioritize for those, I mean, there's probably 3. Like for Florida State, they're already a 12.5-point underdog. For that one, I'm like, man, they just got to be competitive. Mm-hmm. Like show that you belong on the field. You can't have another 63-3 game that they had against Georgia, which I don't think you will see that because that game was so weird with so many players opted out. But this is everyone's opted in. This is a new year. And I really do think it's almost impossible to handicap that game from Florida State's perspective. I think you know what you're going to get from Bama, even though they have a ton of question marks. But I think for Florida State, I don't think it's an imperative they win. I think it's that they are competitive in that game. Miami, Notre Dame is an interesting one because Notre Dame is this pseudo ACC team, but it's still, it's it's weird,
they've got,
right?
they can get into the club, but they don't want to live there.
Right.
They've got a card to get in.
Right.
But y'all just let them come and go as you please.
You know what game is, I think, flying under the radar is the North Carolina TCU game.
For real.
That one for me, because I think the ACC needs Bill Belichick in North Carolina to succeed.
Why?
Because I think it's like if we see, and he's not Deion Sanders, right? He's not the same mentality at all. And it's all been about off-season distractions. But one thing I do think Bill Belichick is going to bring is eyeballs, especially on that game. And if they win that game, I think it carries over. And then they have 2 winnable games. Then they play UCF, their 4th game of the season. Yeah. So if they can start 4-0, I think it's Clemson next maybe. I don't have the schedule memorized, but it's another bigger ACC game. And so if you can start the season 4-0 and it starts with week 1 against TCU, I think that's a good thing because I think a lot of people will be tuning in to see North Carolina, see Bill Belichick. It's, the greatest coach that's ever coached an NFL sideline. How is he doing? And I do think it helps the perception of the ACC. If you see people tuning in and say, oh, Bill Belichick, this is actually working at North Carolina, as opposed to if they lose that game, who the heck knows what could happen to Chapel Hill if that happens.
Do you have a gut feel as to whether that thing's going to work? When I look at it, I'm just telling you, everyone thinks I try and pump sunshine this time of year. Okay, well, swallow this about North Carolina. I flat out don't think it's going to work. I don't think that college football is remotely as comparable to the NFL as the broad brush artists out there tend to paint it. Also, even if you have the investment, let's just say North Carolina's invested. And a lot of the feedback I've gotten is, hey, they're taking it seriously. Like, they're not going to pay him $10 million a year, but not get behind him. Okay, even if you're behind him, you got to go out recruit Georgia or Alabama or Clemson or Miami. You can't just kind of try and stay close to him and hope to out-develop them, because they're good at recruiting and developing. Mm-hmm. So my question with Belichick has not been about Belichick or Michael Lombardi or anything like that. My question has been, when people keep asking, is it going to work? Do you mean, is he going to be able to do everything that North Carolina has done and nothing more? Or is it, since we're paying him a whole lot more money and he's got 47 Super Bowl rings on his fingers, then we want him to win 10 plus. Like, we want him to be a playoff contender. Because if that's what you're counting on, you're asking a guy to come into unfamiliar territory in his 70s, try and win in college for the first time in your 70s. So you're older than any three of your players combined. And you're coming into, I don't care if it's still the sport of football. And I don't care that people say, oh, it's like the NFL. It's not like the NFL. It's not at all like the NFL. And trying to do that for the first time, like, I'm not putting that kind of high expectation on him. I think they'll be what North Carolina has been historically, nothing more. But I don't get that vibe. Like, most people are thinking, man, you got the Chapel Bill T-shirts printed. You better be a playoff contender. Ironically, this season may be their best shot because it's the most workable schedule.
Agreed. I think so this is why I think the ACC and they need North Carolina to work early. Because if they can have an 8-4 season, I think you're exactly right. It's exactly what Mac Brown gave you, another coach in the 70s. So why did you make that move, pay him way more money to get the same results? But I do think if he can at least show that he belongs, that he can win those games, then I think that's where you can sell the recruiting angle more. Because quietly, they do have a top 10 recruiting class, the transfer portal, the transfer portal class, the number 3 class in the ACC. I think they have 9 4-stars coming in. But the one thing that they have lacked and the one thing they were not able to get was that slam dunk quarterback. There weren't a lot of great options available of quarterbacks they could have gotten, and they end up getting Gio Lopez from South Alabama, who may or may not be good. And that, to me, is where it's imperative they have to at least start strong, because then you can say, look, it wasn't a disaster. He can coach this level. He is making some of those adjustments, and that's where you would see that big jump year 2. Because this thing is volatile as it gets. I mean, we've already seen an offseason unlike any other.
It feels like he's been there 4 years.
It really does. I mean, I remember months ago saying, man, if you're Bubba Cunningham, you're thinking, please just get us to the season, when he's getting emails from boosters and alums saying, man, why did we pay this guy $10 million? I have a nephew who went to Carolina, and I was just talking to him this past weekend, and he's like, if we were going to spend that much money, I'd rather put it in our basketball program. So there's going to be all of that conversation. But if you can gain a little bit of momentum, that's where I think year 2, you might see that big jump. There's going to be, and the volatility aspect comes because, I mean, players did not love playing for Bill Belichick in the NFL. They loved winning. And he had a Tom Brady in that locker room who was preaching the gospel of Bill Belichick, which is, it's a grind. Yeah. It is not very fun.
And you're in here no matter what.
In here no matter what. The other thing that no one ever talks about anymore, do you remember the old 20-hour rule?
Sure.
What no one, and I think actually it should be taken off the table, because now that players are getting paid, they shouldn't have to be restricted where it's basically a part-time job, not even. I mean, I have a daughter who works at Chick-fil-A. She puts in more than 20 hours a week there. Like, why do they still have that restriction on them? That, to me, is going to be a big challenge, because one of the things that gave Bill Belichick an edge in the NFL was not the players that he had, but a lot of schemes which require that much more time and preparation in the film room, on the practice field, and he's not going to have that luxury. So that's one of those acclamations that he's going to have to adjust to really quickly. And he's got Steve Belichick, his son, coming, who was at Washington last year, so he'll be able to help some of that. But if you ask me this is one of those wider variants, like picks, that I could see a 4-win season, which would be a disaster. And then you talk about the emails that Bubba Cunningham was receiving before. Can you imagine if that happens? But I also, there's a piece of me that's still in the back of my mind is like, the dude is an incredible coach. And he might have an edge against some of these offensive coordinators who haven't seen some of the stuff that he's going to throw at them.
All right. A lot of things that I get asked about you are really, it's a disappointing answer. So a lot of people think that the online world is the real world. And I'm not saying the online version of you is fake. contrary to popular belief, it's very real. It's sad sometimes, but it's very real. Here's the disappointing part. When we go on the road, none of the haters show up. When we go on the road, when I'll walk up and down a sideline with you, it's just, hey, Danny, hey, can I get a picture with my kid? Now, unbeknownst to you, like that's the same dude trashing you on Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, for sure.
So walk people through basically day in your life when you're out in public, truly how rare it is that you have a nasty encounter.
Oh, it's extremely rare.
It never happens.
I don't know if I've ever had somebody come up to me. Somebody will, but there'll be a smile on their face. Like they're not going to be truly as angry as they are when they're in front of their keyboard and they're just slamming you, telling you they wish your kids had cancer. Like, because I've had those.
It's happened.
And you've had some of those death threats and stuff that happen. But usually, I used to try to go back and forth and win over people. And then I was like, all right, I just don't have time to do it because there were so many of them that were coming through. But I do think that's the one thing I love is getting a reaction out of somebody and seeing the emotional response from them because I feel the passion of college football fans, right? I mean, like the SEC, that is the one thing I've never questioned, that they have the most passionate fan base in college football. It's not even close.
That was the thing 2 years ago. Florida State, the Jordan Travis injury, the end of the year. I mean, everyone went really, really tribal on that. No pun intended. Everyone went really tribal, and it was either you're on the side of committee got it right, committee got it wrong, but both sides looked at the other and said unequivocally, like, you are brainwashed. You are a complete loser if you disagree with me on this. And I looked at that, and it sounded like it was fence riding because I was of the opinion 2 weeks before, you can't leave Florida State out. I don't care if he's hurt. You can't be arbitrarily deciding as a committee, you know the value of a player. Okay, well then, like I'll never forget where I was sitting. I was sitting in our studio, and I'm scrolling Twitter, and there's a headline, chair of the playoff committee says, most deserving is not even in our lexicon. So he changes the protocol on the fly for the playoff. So I listen to that and say, that makes no sense to me. I hate that. However, if that's the protocol, that's the protocol. I'm now going to change my mind. Based off what that guy said, they got it right. Bama should be in because I think they're the better team at the end of the year. You could not have that take. Like, I could not articulate that quickly enough before a lot of the Florida State people said, you're a sellout, like you're bought and paid for by a network. I have no clue which network, but like you're bought and paid for by a network. And then the other side was like, dude, if you took the Florida State side, it was, you got to be kidding me. You think they could even compete without Jordan Travis? I love the whole part of it, is my point, because it was the passion. It wasn't, nobody said, who cares?
I actually was pretty pleasantly surprised from a lot of Miami fans, Florida fans, Bama fans who have never liked me. Like I've always been a little bit harder on Bama, that were actually like, oh, this is awful. You guys are getting screwed. And I would say the responses that I got were almost 80-20 towards the Florida State got screwed. And I even now, like even today when we're having this discussion, you've seen people reference that example of how the committee got it wrong. And who knows? You never know. I still think Florida State could have beaten Michigan in the Rose Bowl because of their defense, even without Jordan Travis. I think their defense was that dominant. But I remember I was very confident that Florida State would get in until I was watching the ACC championship game. And I'm not blaming Jesse and Joe Tessitore that were calling that game, but the offense was so bad and it was unfolding and it was just a gross game. That was a bad TV product. That's the moment I was like, uh-oh. I was like, uh-oh, this may not go our way. And I still was like holding out that sliver of hope when the committee actually made their announcement and you heard all the different arguments that were taking place. But I went from don't worry, as long as we win the ACC, we're in, to uh-oh, this is really going to happen. And sure enough, it did.
You're in a no-win. To me,
I wish it was Miami. I wish it was another team, because I promise you that was a principle-based opinion that I had. It wasn't a Florida State-based opinion. It was, this is wrong, that we are, because football is the greatest team sport that we know. And at the time, you relived all the great examples of backup stepping up, whether it was Ohio State with a third-string quarterback in Cardell Jones.
Recent history.
Yeah, exactly. Recent history. But even historically, going back even further, of how players that we never saw all of a sudden elevating their play, but more importantly, the players around them elevating their play, whether it was a defensive dominant performance or, a running back steps up, everybody else steps up. That was what was disheartening to me. And to see people that I really respected as analysts, and not that I lost respect for them, but just shocked that they would have the opinion that we think they're not as good because, and they weren't going to be as good, but they could be different and still have success.
Yeah.
And people just changing and saying, no, we can't have that team. And I think the biggest fear was you could see that product on the stage in the Rose Bowl. But like, to me, that shouldn't matter.
No, it shouldn't matter at all.
Or if it's ugly or how the game looks. And even, God forbid, if it's a blowout, they should have at least gotten the chance to get that opportunity.
That's the whole, that goes back to my point. So I'm listening to, I can't remember who it was, but when they came out and they said a week ahead of time, oh, most deserving, that's not even in our lexicon. That's the point where someone like me goes, are you insane? Of course it's the lexicon. But once they say that and they've sort of reset the protocol on the fly, I'm going by their protocol.
Right.
So when I say, hey, man, I think Bama's better than Florida State, you're right. That shouldn't be in the equation. They put it in the equation. Mm-hmm. But I think you go back to that play-by-play situation, you're in a no-win situation.
Right.
If you're Jesse, if you're Joe, you're in a no-win situation. First off, you got one who's a former quarterback of the University of Florida who, like you just said, even if he's calling it on principle, he's making comments on principle, you will never convince Florida State fans, understandably so, that, they're doing anything other than trying to sabotage your chance.
And I love both those guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm friends with both of them, worked with them at ESPN, and I don't think there was anything nefarious. I don't think it was because Jesse's a Gator. I think they were voicing, if I was calling the game, I would have been like, man, the committee's going to see this. This is not going to impress, and been having the exact same opinions that they did.
Is there a team to beat in college football this year?
I think this is the most wide-open college football we've seen that I can remember. There's always been at least one or two teams that you were like, okay, they've got their returning quarterback. They've got a championship pedigree. They've got a dominant defense. They've got a championship winning quarterback.
Staff cohesion.
Yeah,
all that,
there's all those things where it's always been there. And I guess you could kind of make the case that it's Penn State, but James Franklin hasn't taken that step
That's
forward
the beauty.
yet.
They haven't done
Drew
it.
Aller hasn't taken that step forward as a quarterback. So I love it. I think this season is setting up to be one of the more entertaining seasons that we could see. And the thing that's really interesting is it's such a potential-based preseason. There's so many teams and so many quarterbacks specifically because there's so many new starters that there's going to be some of them that reach that potential and they maximize it, and they're going to be a team that is there at the end. There's also going to be some that don't. Like, if I could go down the list of guys that were hyped up in the preseason and either weren't even starting by week 6 or week 4, or just had disastrous years, and all of a sudden the team's 7-5. We haven't seen it, and we're also in a pretty unique situation where I know we've got a couple, but there are a lot of players that we've had the luxury, not luxury, I haven't loved the era, but with COVID, we've had 23 and 24-year-old quarterbacks that had played multiple years. Yep. I know it wasn't at that school, but you at least kind of knew, all right, this is going to work to some extent. They're going to be really good. Are they going to be great? Will Howard's a great example. Like, I knew he was going to be pretty good, surrounded with that talent, and he played great this past season, but you didn't feel like it was going to come off the rails. Now, Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz, who knows? Yeah. Like, they may or may not be good. So, like, and all these schools, there's a bunch of them that are like that. So I think that, again, we're talking about North Carolina, the variance of what we could see this season as far as who is the last, team standing or even the last 12 teams standing is pretty wild.
The contenders always had so many bullets in the chamber. Your Georgias, your Bamas, your Ohio States from 7 or 8 years ago. They got 8 or 9 offensive linemen that could play pretty much anywhere. So many of even the contenders, Oregon is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. They got 3 of their starters on the O-line coming from the portal. If that doesn't work out, their season's tanked. If Ohio State's quarterback situation, if it's just B-, C+, your season's tanked. You could say the same thing about Georgia at tailback or D-line. You could say the same thing about Bama at quarterback and several other positions. How many people have not retrained their mind to adjust to the modern era of college football? And how many of your real contenders, teams with a 9.5 or 10.5 over-under win total, could have a 7-5 season? Because that never used to be the case. The floor for those teams was 9 wins. And it's not that way anymore.
And I do think, and probably even more, every conference has a lot more depth. I do think that there is more parity. I know we use that word a lot, but I do think we're seeing for Ohio State the question marks, for Oregon the question marks. think Iowa's got a pretty good addition to quarterback and Mark Gronowski.
I know you love the FCS QB scene.
I do. I mean, look at what Cam Ward did for Miami.
That's true, actually.
But I do think
it's gonna be
a
used
lot
to
of
the end of time.
I do think, and Nebraska's kind of positioned to be a lot better. Like the teams under that, like Michigan could be a lot better, and they should be. They better be, or else Jerome Moore could be there. But even the SEC below Bama and that upper tier, like in the SEC, it's interesting because I was kind of looking at this. I think there's 4 at the top, there's kind of 4 at the bottom, and then there's this middle 8 that are all, I think they're all pretty good. And without that dominance at the top, where they're good and they're a tier by themselves,
it's a car crash.
It really is.
It's going to be bad, man.
So, and like I do think the debate's going to be even more heated this year because I don't think we're going to see as many undefeated teams or 1-loss or potentially even 2-loss teams as we saw last year, where it was kind of clear cut and that was that division. I think there's going to be a lot of speculation and debate and conversation about teams that are 9-3, 10-2, and with all the talk about strength of schedule. Car crash a great way to talk about it.
You just stacked up the SEC. We were down there in Atlanta last week. We were just like doing radio hits and everything. It struck me how many fan bases think last year was this appetizer to the main course this year. Florida is that. Like, they unequivocally think they'll be better. South Carolina thinks 9 wins last year. We got Lenoris back. We'll take the next step. Bama absolutely thinks they'll be back in contention. Georgia won the SEC last year, but they kind of felt like they were down a little bit. Texas, next step is championship. Ole Miss, we never should have missed the playoff last year. We'll absolutely make it this year. Auburn's got to rebound under Freeze. LSU's got to be better under Brian Kelly with year 2 with that defensive staff. There aren't enough wins to go around. So someone's about to catch a 7-5 down there. That's probably not even a terrible team, despite what you may say in November. They're probably not a terrible team. I don't think people's expectation is like recalibrated to understand 7-5 doesn't mean hot seat, or maybe it doesn't automatically mean hot seat. But if you're Kirby Smart, that doesn't matter. You'll never be on the hot seat. If you're Hugh Freeze, for all we know, you made all the right moves. You will not be given the length of rope to even have time to figure it out if you don't get it done this year.
Like when I think of the recalibration, I'm not saying that fan bases should change their expectation.
I am.
Could be.
I think they should.
They should. Oklahoma's a good example.
Yeah.
Like Oklahoma, Brent Venables, hot seat, it's there. They're, the Mateer comes in and they're sort of a trendy pick and he's calling the defensive plays. And they were used to running through the Big 12, right? I mean, Texas had their moments, but a team that was perennially 10, 11 wins, like they were always.
That was a starting point.
Right. But now you go into the SEC, and I know that was the big mantra from the SEC fans was, oh, you guys are going to be a 500 team once you come here. But now that they're in it and Texas is in it, plus all those teams, I think you are 100% right that the expectation has got to change. But what salvages a 9-3 season is a playoff spot.
Sure.
And I think that's why you're seeing so much of the SEC coaches saying we need to look at, let's go to the 5+11. Let's have the, it drives me nuts. The whole, we just want the best teams in there. And then it comes back, well, how do you determine the best? But I do think that is something why the SEC loves that model, is that is the best model for them to potentially stack the field.
Oh, absolutely. That's why.
Was that, I saw a graphic. And I have to be very careful because I'm getting older and I can get got way more easily than I could even 10 years ago. Did the ESPN FPI have the top 11 schedules in the country, the toughest schedules? Was that an SEC list or was that a national list that just so happened to have the toughest 11 schedules in the country, all SEC? Is that real?
Okay. I'm not going to question the good, solidly earned reputation of the FPI. Oh. That's not going to be me. The answer to your question is yes. That's absolutely who that was.
Because that to me, that's
setting the table,
why
man.
We're here at Big Ten Media Days. That's why they are terrified of the 5+11. Because, and I do think that is something that the SEC is going to be talking about all season long, is strength of schedule, which I agree. Not all schedules are created equal.
Yeah.
How do you quantify that?
This is where the bad faith arguments are on both sides.
Right.
Because like I look at the SEC, I think it's the deepest league. I think on average, an SEC schedule probably is tougher to navigate. But then they can't just say it like that. Like they've got to issue 9 pages of propaganda packets. And then, look, I credit Eli Drinkwitz last week.
Yeah.
He stepped to the podium and that dude flat out said, is this thing on? I don't really care what everyone else here thinks. I'm kind of going to do something rare. I'm going to go out on a limb and say what I think's best for college football. The thing about it is when they had their spring meetings, it sounded like there was a lot of synergy in the AQ model.
Yeah.
And then they come out of Destin Once someone explained to those coaches, here's what 5+11 really means, you could lose a quarter of your games and you're probably still going to be safely in. Magically, all the coaches and ADs push Greg Sankey. No, we want the 5+11. And it's absolutely in the best interest of the SEC. At least Drink said, but is it in the best interest of college football? And then I think he had a trank dart in his neck and he fell asleep.
This blows my mind that you've got the Big 12 and the ACC who are buying into this model.
Yeah.
Which is a detriment. I think it is a detriment to the ACC and Big 12.
Agree.
And it's like, I feel like they've drank some Kool-Aid that Greg Sankey has sent to them to have them promoting a model that is clearly going to benefit the SEC. And you mentioned like where that shift took place, because I was kind of on board, not with the 16 team with the 4-4, 2-2-1, whatever, but the 14 team.
Yeah, I
was
agree.
kind of on board with that because my philosophy was the ACC and the Big 12 are going to get screwed any way you look at it, which I'm kind of okay with. They're not as good as the Big 10 or the SEC. They don't have the same resources. They don't have the same ability to buy the players. So if you're going to get screwed, at least know how you're going to get screwed going into it.
Yeah.
And you have that chance with one of the at-large bids to potentially get that third team. So at least you know, because if you go to 5+11, I think the Big 12, I think Brett Yormark is going to regret his comments because I think they're going to be almost annually getting only one team in.
Unless he knows something we don't know about their future,
right?
There's no way it goes any way other than what you just said.
Right.
It's so weird that they've dug their heels in on that.
It blows my mind because I don't think it benefits their leagues, and yet they've completely signed off in it and even promoting it as opposed to one of them getting – they don't want to admit what I just admitted, that they're not the same as the Big Ten or the SEC or that they're inferior. They don't deserve as many teams. But it's just not the reality. And I think they're afraid to admit that, which I get. I mean, we were talking about earlier about you have to promote your league the best way you can. But I think that is the worst scenario, the worst possible outcome for the ACC and Big 12.
Okay, we got to eat dinner in a second, so I want to wrap on this. If you were to pick one team/coach you're the most intrigued to watch this year, go wherever you want with it, because I got one in my head. So who is it for you?
One team, one coach this season.
Ideally, that coach is the coach of that team.
Yeah. I'll go one coach and one player. I want to see James Franklin and Drew Aller because it does feel like if it doesn't happen now, is it ever going to happen?
It's a window.
Right?
Yeah.
And not only is it a window because of what they've got coming back, going and getting Jim Knowles, getting both running backs back, it feels like, because that's what Michigan had. Remember they had a couple players who foregone the draft, Ohio State players foregone the NFL draft, Katron Allen, Singleton, they decide to come back. I do think that sets up. So you've got that aspect to it, but you've also got the other top tiers in the Big Ten, the other top teams with all these question marks. Ohio State, both new defensive coordinators. You've got a new quarterback. You've got them. They lost so many pieces. Oregon lost so many pieces. They don't have the luxury of having a 25-year-old quarterback again. They're breaking in somebody new. Michigan feels vulnerable. They have got a lot of question marks around them. So their toughest competitors all have question marks. Penn State has all the advantage. If they can't do it this season, it really does make you wonder if it'll ever happen.
So they went to the semifinal last year, right? Mm-hmm. Here's what's so wild about that. Everything a James Franklin hater would have said going into last year, they can still say.
Yeah, still haven't beat a top 5 team.
They can still say you haven't beaten the top team. You got a shot at Ohio State, you lost. You got a shot in the conference title game, Oregon, you lost. You got Boise and SMU served up to you. Once you went against a comparable opponent, you lost. So it's all still there. And when I say window, it's a very, very unique college football type window.
Yeah.
You're not in a window, you better keep your job or anything like that. It's not a job security kind of pressure. There's one or two things we haven't accomplished, and this is the year to do it. I go completely radically opposite side of the coin. Texas Tech this year.
Ooh,
they're
that's a great
in
one.
such a situation. They're in the most entertaining conference in college football. I call it America's conference because it's so unpredictable. It's so competitive. It's more competitively balanced than any league out there. Mm-hmm. The money has been balanced up until 5 minutes ago. And Texas Tech said, well, you want to talk about a window? There's a window that if we just have a billionaire hanging out over here, Cody, yep, okay, let's go. And so they went. And I don't know that I've ever seen a coach in as unique a position as Joey McGuire's in this year, because you've never had the ability in college athletics to do what they just did. And Arizona State brings virtually everybody back. Kenny brings his entire coaching staff back. And Texas Tech goes 180 degrees opposite. Clean it out. Burn it down. Let's not start from scratch, but let's bring a huge amount of starting players in here. Let's revamp the coaching staff. And because we spent so much money on it, let's just expect it out of the gate to be ready to go. And if it works that way, that's great. History says that's not the way team sports always work out. And so there's this weird dynamic with them too. Like if they do anything less than win the Big 12 this year, those people view it as a failure.
Right.
And it's such a unique dynamic. I don't know that we've seen that anywhere else.
I think that the portal experiment, we've seen two teams, and unfortunately one of them's Florida State, the other one is Colorado, that have really majored in the portal.
Yeah.
Florida State worked out great. The season they got left out of the playoff, and then what did we see last year? Saw 2 wins, one of the worst seasons in Florida State history. The other one is Colorado. Remember, Deion majored in the portal, and it was a disaster the first year. And then last year they had one of their best seasons. So, and I'm with you. I do think it tends to take time, but unfortunately, Joe McGuire doesn't have that luxury because they are spending that money. Shahan Jayaraja, our colleague at CBS Sports, he went out to Lubbock and did this whole deep dive on him. And I was doing a hit with him last week or 2 weeks ago on CBS Sports HQ. He's from the area, and I was like, what do you think the expectations are? And he said, they're expecting 10 wins.
Yep.
And like anything less is a failure. And if I was spending that type of money, or even if I was a fan of the program and saying we're spending all this money, yeah, you're right, we should do that. But you make a great point about in a team sport, it is so tough to get players on the same page, moving in the same direction, establishing a culture that is everyone's on this. It's almost impossible to do, and yet the expectation is it's going to work like that.
The Big 12 is a bunch of rosters of 4th, 5th year guys.
Yeah.
They're just like little bowling balls, and they're not former 4 and 5 stars. A lot of them know college is it for them. It's really tough. Those are like rubber band balls that are really tough to unwind. Daniel Jeremetrius Kanell, I thought this was pretty brave of you. Thank you.
Oh, come on, man. I never turned this down.